Hey there, are you grieving the potential loss of a loved one or feeling overwhelmed with the loss of someone you care about? If so, you're in the right place. Lisa Hartung here, and this podcast is designed to guide you through topics surrounding death and dying. We'll dive into multifaceted aspects of grief, offering you a blend of personal stories, expert insights, and practical advice for your grief journey. May this be a safe space for you to learn, listen, and ask questions about your own life and loved ones. So grab your favorite beverage and let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm super excited because today we have Katie Megrian as a special guest. She's a former teacher and principal, current K through 12 literacy director, a mom of 2 daughters, and after more than 2 decades working in schools, she founded the Reading Symphony, a mission-driven platform that helps families and educators understand how reading develops and how it can transform lives. For Katie, the work of teaching, storytelling, and building connection is profoundly personal. Loss has been a thread that's punctuated several chapters of her life, from the death of her brother when she was just 4 years old, the passing of a beloved aunt at the age of 15, and the loss of her father at 29, just 6 months before her wedding and just a year before she launched a new school as a founding principal. So those experiences have shaped how she sees the world, and it's really a place where stories help us make meaning of pain, where love and legacy live on in the words that we share, and where reading becomes more than a skill. It becomes a bridge between past and present, memory and possibility. I'm super excited to have Katie on the show, and we have so many common threads. And so, Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Lisa. It's really, really wonderful to be here. Excited to talk.
Yeah. And before we started recording, Katie and I both went to Bates College. So we discovered that common connection, and it's such a gift to be able to connect in really neat ways. And I thought, Katie, maybe thank you so much for sharing your story and your vulnerability with us. I think that anytime we have personal experiences that we've moved through, they really help others, help us navigate. Sometimes we have listeners who are currently going through the loss and grief of a loved one, and sometimes a loved one passed many years ago, but they learn new tools through listening to some of our guests. So thank you for sharing your story with us. I wanted to perhaps go back to when you were a child. Maybe you could talk to us about your family life and losing a sibling at such a young age, and kind of what grief looked like that in different stages of your life, because you have an early childhood, a teen, and an almost 30 passing loved ones. So
as you were asking that, the first word that came up to me was for losing my brother Donnie at age 4, and then as well as with my father, 25 years later, like triage came to mind, because when Donnie passed away, there was a lot going on around the whole ecosystem of my life. My family's life was really disrupted already. So when my brother died, he died in a motorcycle accident. He was in the armed services and was at training, was, leaving a party with a friend, and their motorcycle went off the road. And all of this, of course, are details that I learned a little bit later, but this was just months within having moved from Indiana after my parents separated. And my older sister, who's 8 years older, and I had moved to this new state, new house. My dad wasn't there anymore. I was with my mom. And then this happened as well. I think, when I was 4, what's crazy is I have very, very crystallized memories of my brother. He was so great. He was very protective. He was so loving. He was 21, so a very big age difference between us. So he was like another dad to me in some ways. And so I have some very distinct memories of spending time with him just one-on-one. And
Mm.
so I don't think I really had a lot of understanding of exactly what happened when I was 4, just that he was gone. And also my dad felt gone. And for me, that really manifested in having a lot of trouble sitting still in class and like being quiet. I talked out of turn all the time. I was needing tons and tons of attention. So yeah, like it just felt hectic that time. And I was sort of just like doing what I need to be doing. And I will say, like my parents, they were fully emotive. They would cry, they would talk about him. They would, it wasn't like it was like suppressed, but I think I was just like, whoa, there's a lot going on. And so I it just came out as needing attention. For my father, it also kind of felt like triage because it just happened so fast and there was so much going on around me at the time. And for my Aunt Sue was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of brain cancer when I was 15. One of my mother's, just such a light in my mother's life and a support to her through all that she had gone through. I found myself very withdrawn from it. Like I didn't know quite how to cope around it. And so I distanced myself from her a lot. And that's just kind of an interesting phenomenon to think about now. I don't even remember what your original question was, but that was sort of like where I went sort of mentally with Donnie and my dad. It was like, oh my gosh, this is just emergency and I need to cope and I just need to like do the next thing. And with my Aunt Sue, I was just like, I can't deal with this right now. So I'm just not going
Mm.
to.
Do you think that that was part of being a teenager and
Probably.
feeling like the teenage angst?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I think it was that. It was like, my mom it was so hard on her. And she's always pretty stoic. I mean, like I said, she would talk about Donnie and death. And it wasn't like it was like this forbidden topic, but
Mm.
she was always very strong. And seeing her struggle, I like didn't know how to handle that. I think it was a combination of that and just being like, I'm 14 and my brain's just like does not know how to process all of this. So I'm just gonna do my homework and go to soccer practice
And like
and
pretend it just
yeah, yeah,
didn't happen.
yeah,
If I
yeah,
don't say the words,
right,
it's just
right. Yeah,
avoidance, right?
yeah.
Well, losing your dad just,
Hmm.
6 months before your wedding.
Yeah.
I'm, I like that you use the word triage because
Hmm.
it definitely does feel that way. So he had pancreatic cancer.
Yeah. Hmm.
And was he sick before?
Well, yes and no. He'd never been that healthy. So what's crazy about my father getting ill and passing away in the way he did was like I kind of felt like that was going to happen, knowing how he sort of lived his life. Like I didn't know it was going to happen in that particular way, but probably about a year before he was diagnosed, I remember telling a best friend, also a Bates, I feel like in some ways my dad is living on borrowed time. And the reason I said that was because he smoked a pack a day.
Mm.
He ate terribly. And he was in recovery, but had spent a large part of his life drinking and doing drugs excessively. And so he just was not a picture of perfect health at all. And so when we finally, when he started to get sick, it kind of happened slowly. Like he lost a lot of weight and then he was having some stomach problems. And then it was just sort of like, it was just a lot of like, oh, we think it's indigestion. When we found out that it was stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Remember, we found out like on Thanksgiving Day. It was almost like I knew that that was going to happen. And I had no idea at that point what pancreatic cancer was. Like, I had no clue what that meant in terms of the time he had left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he had, was it 28 days
Yeah.
from diagnosis to passing?
Hmm.
Oh
Hmm.
my gosh.
Yeah.
And so in that time, this is something that I hear a lot with individuals who are diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer is sometimes it's a very short time. And so
Yeah.
when he got the diagnosis, did you all had been like, okay, yes, we thought something was happening. Was there anything that you did? I mean, you're trying to plan a wedding at this point as well.
Planning a wedding, planning school. I'm teaching 5th grade full time. What I did do and what I should have done are two different things. But I felt like I was on the phone with him, with my sister, with my stepmother, like 24/7. I didn't tell outside of my like closest friends and my boss, I didn't tell anyone. I just kept working. And I knew that I was close to winter break. It was like 2.5 weeks before I went home for winter break because as a teacher, I had that time off. And so I just figured we'd go and we'd get our bearings and we'd figure out a plan. And I remember one night I was sort of just like, because you do the rabbit hole thing of like,
Oh my
you
gosh.
know, WebMD, what's pancreatic cancer and what does that mean? And I remember just like losing my breath when it was like, it could mean 2 to 4 months, it could be up to, but it could be 2 months. And that was when it really hit me. Like, I wish at that point I would have just like shut my laptop and just like booked a flight and just went home. But I did wait until it was winter break. And at that point, he had already started some chemo and it was so hard on him. And he was, it was really, he wasn't even mobile at that point. Like the chemo had taken so much out of him that he was just like in a recliner in the living room of his house. It was pretty clear, like after the first time I saw him, that it was going to be like, I thought maybe we had like 6 months left. And so I think I was just like in denial. And then 2 weeks later, he died. Like I was still home for winter break. He died on New Year's Eve, 2010. Yeah, the whole thing was just so fast. It was just wild. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Fast and Furious and
Yeah. Yeah. And
just
it's crazy. And I don't know how this, I know your mom had more time, a little bit more time,
Mhm.
never enough. I remember toward the end, it was just such a vile, he was in such awful shape and so miserable.
Yeah.
I remember like praying for him to die, which is such a crazy, I've talked about that with other friends and family members, how wild that is to love somebody so much and just know that like this is just not for him. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think that point that you made was so important of I love him so much and I don't want him to suffer.
Yeah.
And I had talked with Dan McNamee a couple episodes ago. He's a stage 4 pancreatic cancer survivor. And he
Oh.
said it's almost harder to be the caregiver than the individual themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, I just have to show up every day
Yeah.
and um, and go through the motions, get the chemo, but my loved ones are seeing how it's affecting me.
Yeah.
And he said that that was almost the harder
Mm-hmm.
part of
Mm-hmm.
because you feel so helpless as a caregiver, right?
Yeah. Right.
You don't know how to help, and
Right.
um, yeah, throwing ourselves into work is a coping mechanism, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, how you said, I would do it differently now.
Yeah.
Like in hindsight, it's always 2020, but
Yeah.
what would you have done differently?
I would have told more people. I would have told
Have that
and my
support.
best friends knew, but I would have just told more. I would have told like my team that I taught with. I would have told some additional friends. I would have asked for time off of work. I went to back to work 3 days after his funeral. I would have taken more time off.
Yes.
I would go through therapy. I just really did suppress it. I was like, okay, this happened. That was awful what happened. And now I just need to like not move on because something that I've always felt grateful for is when we lost my brother so young, my parents like kept his name alive, talked about him in such a loving way, that there was never any shame around it, to the extent that like even my own kids know who Uncle Donnie is. There's pictures and so like I just knew, and something I said at his funeral was like, I just know my kids will know him. Like they all know Pop-Up Jim. They all know he was kind of crazy and he had like really bad language and, it was very embarrassing and was a huge Michigan State fan and just sort of said whatever was on his mind and didn't care what people thought. So I knew that like, I think what I did do well was I continued to think about him. I didn't just like totally suppress him.
Yeah.
But I definitely didn't take enough time to heal. It was just this like, again, triage to get back to like what I needed to focus on next, which was building a school, hiring people, planning the curriculum, and then getting married. Yeah.
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 All within a short period of
Yeah, all
time.
within 6 months of that. Yeah. Yeah. I might have even, when I think back, for a split second, my husband, then my now husband, fiance at the time, we thought about doing like, should we do like a private ceremony and get married early, that type of thing. And I don't know, I still go back and forth on that.
When your dad was
Yeah,
diagnosed.
like maybe we should have just done that. I
Mhm.
had some sort of like sadness around not making that choice. But I just don't think I think my dad would have wanted me to have the wedding that I wanted to have. And
Mhm.
and also we just nobody knew it was going to happen that fast either. I don't even
Yeah.
think he did.
It's wild. One day, from one day to the next can be like, what? Like
Hmm.
what is happening here? But
Hmm.
yeah, it's um life-changing for sure.
Hmm.
And so as you are, you're saying, okay, I want to really get into, I'm going to throw myself into work because that is my coping mechanism.
Yep.
So you have the wedding, and did you go on honeymoon after
We
that, or
no, we didn't. We
because you were
went
starting the school?
yeah, we went the following February, which was wonderful. But yeah, we couldn't. We just took a couple days off, and then I was back to work after that.
So was there ever a time in that first year after his passing that you took time to contemplate what all of the things, like took some time for
No,
yourself? No?
no, and really like for the next, I would say, gosh, so I'm 43 now, so I was 29. I would say really the next like 10 years, I really just kind of put my head down and focused on work. I did have kids over that time, so two
Yeah.
beautiful children and that's been wonderful. But I think it's really only recently, honestly, since finding some very inspirational sort of mentors like Kathy Heller, and others who are just really encouraging me to slow down and just like think about what I need, like what I really deeply need,
Mhm.
not necessarily what I should do or like what will make me feel good right now. Like I need to actually like go through some things in
Yeah.
order to get to the other side. And I think for a long time I just tried to go around it.
Yes.
Even when we lost my brother, I'm
Mm.
assuming, I don't know this is totally true, but knowing myself, I probably tried to make myself as small as possible during that time just to like make sure everybody was okay because that's sort of the persona that I've emerged at is the person that just like wants everybody to be happy and okay and
Mm.
like I'm going to just like also be the logistics person to make sure that everything just falls into place so that we can just focus on what we need to do. But I think just in the past year or so I've like started to unravel that a little bit more, which can be really painful and really cause you to kind of go back and re-grieve, but also really, really important. I think we talked a little bit about like how do I want my own children to be able to know death and to think about death. And,
Yeah.
my mother is 76 years old at some point in the next, I hope it's not anytime soon, but like it's interesting. I wonder if you feel this way too. Even losing one parent, like I don't feel any more prepared to lose my second parent,
No.
like I
No.
don't have a playbook for that. And so, but I do think that the one lesson that just keeps coming back to me is like you have to talk about it with your kids.
Yeah.
um or no judgment on people who don't, but like I'm glad that my parents talked about it with me.
Yeah. And I interviewed um a another person that was said that you die twice. You die
Mm,
like
mm.
physically, and then the second time is the last time someone speaks your name.
Oh, wow.
And so I just really think about that on how like we gotta keep telling their stories. And I love how you share with your kids, like,
Hmm.
yes, Uncle and Pop Pop, like
Hmm.
they're very much part of the family network and the story and the glue that keeps everyone together. And they see pictures and they know that they're very much, part of the family, just in a different way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I
it's just
just
a changed relationship. And it's interesting. I'm sure you see this too. My kids will, every once in a while, like when I'm thinking about my dad, a few minutes later, they'll like ask a question about him, or something there, or we always loved Creedence Clearwater music. That was one of his favorite artists. And so, I'll be having a certain type of day and then that song will come on, like it's just amazing how those little signs do really come out. And it's beautiful to be able to share with my kids at that time too. Just like a good reminder, like, hey, I'm still here.
Yeah. I mean, I think those signs we're always looking for them as our in our family. like, where's Mimi? How's Mimi
Mm-hmm.
showing up today?
Mm-hmm.
And it just helps keep them with us. I'm thinking about how you talked about, okay, we don't have a playbook for when we lose
Mm-hmm.
our second parent. And I feel as though, and I don't, tell me if you're feeling this too, but I feel as though now that I've gone through that with my mom, I'm always waiting for the second shoe to drop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's that anticipatory grief. But I wouldn't say it's that necessarily. I more enjoy every connection and every conversation that I
Mm-hmm.
have with my dad. And it's almost sweeter because
Yeah.
I'm fully present and I'm realizing and being intentional about spending time with him.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that made me think about there was this study done recently about how much less time you spend with your parents like once you hit the age of 18 and
Yeah.
how if you only see it's scary math, but if you see your parents 1 to 2 times a year and they're like in their 70s, you might only see them literally like 15 more times, 12 more times, 10 more times, and that was another piece of my upcoming career change, which is just to start my own business so that I have a little bit more flexibility to just book a flight to Michigan whenever I want to go see my mom. Not when something bad happens, like I don't want it to have to just be waiting until an emergency comes up if she, God forbid, falls or something goes on health wise. Like I want to be there for those moments. And she's not right next to me geographically. And so, yeah, I think about that math all the time. It's depressing, but it's a really good reminder that it's just very finite.
Yeah, Lara Casey she's the former owner of Cultivate What Matters, but
Mm.
she did a whole podcast episode called Number Your Days.
Oh,
And I think about that all the time. And after listening to that podcast, it was way before my mom got sick, but
mm,
I remember just being more intentional about when you don't live close to your
yeah,
family, just take the flight, like make
yeah.
time. You will not
Pick up the
regret it.
phone, like don't silence the call. It might not be a very convenient time, but just pick it
Yeah.
up and say hi. Yeah.
And just let them know you love them. Like, do you think that having those three losses in your earlier life has changed how you maintain your relationships with friends and family now?
Yeah, I think that as I've gotten older, I've learned that, I only have so much capacity to put everything into like a small number of relationships, but if I try to have a super expansive group, which I love people and I love meeting people and being around new friends, but for the ones that like, you know, are my ride or dies, including my sister, including my mother, my husband and his family as well, and a really close knit group of friends from different parts of my life. Like I do really try to pour in, and then just sort of like remind myself that that means that there are some things that I can't do really well in terms of having a much broader but like shallower network with me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I absolutely think it's made me book that trip, that girl's trip, even when it's really inconvenient for my husband or bad timing, or if I'm going to miss my daughter's first recital, I'm going to go. Or, just if it doesn't seem like I should take a day off of work because my, a family member, maybe they're not like suffering greatly, but could use a hand after like a low grade surgery, I'm just going to do it because I can. And so little choices like that absolutely have been shaped by the loss. I wish sometimes that bigger things, disappointments or things that I'm freaking out about unnecessarily. I
Mm-hmm.
wish that I could just be like, you like your dad died and you got through that. Like, why are you freaking out about this conversation you have to have tomorrow, right? Or, telling your boss that you are going to leave your job. I do, and maybe that's just me, but it is interesting how different fears, if you stack them against each other, can still feel somewhat equal in the moment. Not
Yeah.
equal, but they can cause
Like
the same
overwhelming.
impact, of anticipatory fear when
Mm-hmm.
you've gone through something that like is so gargantuan and monstrous and you've overcome it, like why I can't necessarily cultivate that strength in those smaller moments because
Yeah.
I've been through crazy stuff and have gotten through it. And so it's a good reminder that like if I can get through that, I can get through this thing. But that's something that like I kind of consciously have to remind myself of a lot more than wish I had to.
I think that that's great though, because everyone has those feelings
Yeah.
of you have that fear and anxiety of, whatever that next thing is, even if it's right, a difficult conversation you have to
Mhm.
have at work. I love the sense of saying, okay, I've gotten through really, really challenging things in my life and I've got this. And that's where it's so important we turn inward and say, all
Mhm.
right, I can do this.
Mhm.
I can do hard things. And then you just have to, coach
Mhm.
yourself through it. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really does put things into perspective. And one thing a friend said, and I always remember this, we were getting ready for graduation from Bates, and he looked at me and he was like, are we going to remember these things in 5 years? And
Mm.
if not, like studying for the final
Yeah.
exams, right? Is that going to be what we remember about college?
Mhm.
No, we're
Mhm.
going to remember, where we studied abroad
Yeah.
or, those really cool classes where we learned a lot.
Yeah.
So I always put that into perspective as well.
Yeah.
Okay, am I going to remember this difficult conversation in five
Yeah.
years? Or where you said, yes, I'm going to book that girls' trip because
Yeah.
you'd said earlier how much you are the person that gets the logistics together,
Mhm.
make sure everyone else is
Mhm.
okay. And so by being able to fill your own cup up
Mhm.
with a girls' trip
Yep.
where you can leave husband and kids at home and just have time with your girlfriends is just so revitalizing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important. Yeah. And it's something that I've heard a lot of people who have lost loved ones say you live for them, like you do those things because they can't do that anymore.
Mhm.
And that's really important.
Yeah, I'm interested in, and everyone does this a little differently, but
Mm.
do you celebrate either birthdays or death days, or are there any specific days that you celebrate your loved ones?
So the timing of my father's death is really interesting because it's New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And so now I have two kids and we are my husband and I lead a very quiet, low-key life. And so we wouldn't like be weighing, do we want to go to this crazy party or more in, pop-up gym? It's we're home. But when I was younger, even, so, most of my 30s when there were different, options to think about, I had to pause for a moment. The first year after he passed away, I definitely just kept it very low key. It wasn't super mournful because I found that it wasn't those like big anniversary days that were the hardest for me. It was like in the middle of the night, like 2 months
Mm,
later, where I just was so sad.
yeah.
And I think I built up that anniversary day as being this thing that was going to be the worst of all of the days. And it was those small micro moments that were way worse to me.
It's that build up, it's
Um,
that anticipation of the day.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you like I knowing my dad, I just know he would be so annoyed if I was just like sitting home and being sad. Like he would want me to go have fun. He would want me to live. So on New Year's Eve, we always have a great day. We really do. We always do the Old Lang Syne song with our family and we jump around with our girls and we always have a really nice dinner and order Chinese food and it's a really like celebratory mood and we always think about my dad. His birthday, it's in June. And so basically every family member in our whole family, or at least 75% of them have birthdays in June. And so it's sort of couched across a lot of celebration, which is kind of nice because it just takes the focus off of that one day.
Hmm.
Yeah. When he was a huge Michigan State fan, big Michigan State Spartans fan, like whenever he would see anybody with a sweatshirt on, like he would embarrass me so much. He'd strike up a conversation with them. And so anytime Michigan State plays, I would like to say anytime that's not true. I'm definitely a fair weather fan. When they're like in a championship or in a very important game, I am watching and I'm thinking about him.
Yeah.
And so at this point, it's much more celebratory. He was just a really funny person that just didn't care what people thought about him or what he did or what he said. And so he left some really great memories to laugh about.
Yes, it's celebrating those funny
Yeah.
memories. Great.
Yeah, like the
Oh,
last one of his last words to me, this is something that like if you don't tell it the right way or if you to read it on paper, people feel like, what? He could be very curmudgeon-y and he was always very gentle with his kids, but he could be snippy and brash. And the last words he said to me were, So I said, Dad, do you need anything? And it was, really, really at the end when you're, giving them their hydration through the little sponges. And it's just so awful. I
Heartbreaking.
said, Dad, do you need anything? He goes, yeah, shut the hell up. And that sounds so bad, but it was just so him. Like, I can't imagine any other way that he would go because he can say that in a way that, like, I just know he loves me so much and he's just being authentically himself. And I can still laugh about it, Like, it's just one of my favorite memories of him because it's so him.
Him through and through.
Yeah, yeah. And the
Yeah.
great thing about him and how he lived is that, like, that was in his deathbed, and most people are their most authentic selves, but like he lived his most authentic self his whole life, which is pretty cool and unusual.
Yeah. And
And wasn't always a good thing, didn't always make good decisions and didn't always make people feel good, but like you can't say he lived for other people.
and that's a great lesson for you to take.
Yeah.
Like, yes, let's live
Yeah,
our more authentic lives,
absolutely. It's
right?
coming in handy for sure as
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s and yeah, just getting older, not getting younger,
I know. Mel Robbins said, "You're not getting any younger than you are today."
right?
I thought
Yep.
that's really great.
Yep, you're the youngest you'll ever be right now
So you
for the
might as
rest of
well
your life.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm interested in, do you feel like as you are getting older and you
Mm.
experience other types of losses of
Mm.
close people that you know or family
Mm.
members, do they hit differently now that you've experienced these three significant losses in your before 30 life?
So wild is that they felt condensed in that first 3 decades. And it
Hmm.
really hasn't been. I mean, certainly people who I know have passed away, but no one within my very, very close circle. Been, almost 14 years, 15 years at this point since that has happened. So I actually can't even answer that. I do think that things phase me generally a little bit less, and that could be because it's not lack of care
Hmm.
or empathy. Sometimes the news cycles or different tragedies that happen, I can't tell if it's like, am I disassociating because I just like don't want to feel that,
Yeah.
or am I desensitized because I felt so much? I don't have a good answer to that, but I haven't actually, to your direct question, I haven't had like a death of a close loved one since my father died.
Mm.
So it will be
It's for a long
interesting
time.
to navigate that as family members get older.
Yeah. It's interesting when you lose a parent earlier because you're the first,
Mm-hmm.
right? First of your friend
Mm-hmm.
groups. And so
Mm-hmm.
so friends might not fully know what it feels like
Right.
until they go through it
Yeah.
themselves. And so
Yeah.
you can then be a support for them
Right.
as they experience it as well. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting to navigate. But
Mm-hmm.
are you thinking about your dad as you were thinking about your career and switching gears and how he
Mm-hmm.
lived authentically, living out that legacy by doing something that's more authentic to yourself?
I mean, the thing about yes, and I think even though I'm making a shift career-wise, the entry into education and specifically around teaching literacy and reading was very much a result of his guidance and his impact on my life. And so I think of it as kind of carrying it on in a way that's definitely more reflective of what I want for myself right now. But
Mm.
if it wasn't for him and the impact he had, I don't think I would have ever entered this particular line of work. Just a very
Mm.
quick story is he was a criminal defense attorney. And so for quite a while, I thought that I was going to be a lawyer, like high school leading into college. And then the summer of my sophomore year at Bates, I was home and did some interning with him. My job was to support his clients who couldn't read for themselves, read their rights to them and what their charges were prior to their arraignment. And so the experience of reading aloud to another adult just felt so it just felt bad. Like I knew they were ashamed
Yeah.
for not being able to read for themselves, for having this like 20-year-old read to them. I felt ashamed and angry that they had never been taught. And it was really through that experience that I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I want to teach reading. I very specifically want to teach reading. And both my parents, my whole family were so supportive of that. we would have, through his work as a criminal defense attorney, we would have a lot of really open, honest conversations about inequity, like from a very, very young age. I would ask him, like, why don't you have very many white clients? Or, and he'd never, and that was the demographics of his particular clientele in the city where he worked. But he was a public defender for a lot of his work. And so he talked to me a ton about opportunity gaps and how not everybody starts on the same footing, and how, like, not every kid like me grows up in this bubble of a, homogenous Midwestern town that gets a good teacher every single year. And that's what that looks like at the end of it, right? I see my work as continuously reflecting his legacy on me. And I definitely have to give my mom credit too. She's one of the most giving people in the world as well. And is just naturally a teacher at heart. But yeah, he's with me every day as I do this work.
And it's just such meaningful work. Like literacy is
Mm.
everything. It helps you navigate the world and be part of, feel like you have more autonomy over things when you can read. And
Absolutely. Yeah, it's freedom. And that's not to say that, there's very, very real challenges that even if you can read well, you may need
yeah,
to, persist through. But it's not having that makes it all the harder.
yeah, yeah. And Katie, I just love that as well. My mom was a fifth grade literacy teacher before she opened her own business. And so, reading was always big growing up for us too, and being at the
Oh, that's so
library and helping
wonderful.
instill the love of reading for the next
Hmm.
generation is just so inspiring. And so I'm excited to see what comes next for you and for this work and for you spreading your light through literacy and working with families and children. And if anyone listening wants to get involved and connect with you, what is the best way to do that?
Currently, I'm still building out a website, some of the more official pieces, but I have an Instagram handle called The Reading Symphony, just at The Reading Symphony. And I write a weekly Substack. It's also same name, The Reading Symphony, that shares research-based tips that are efficient for parents and bite-sized that you can do at home to ensure your kids are on the right track, or how to navigate challenges with communicating with schools, all different types of pieces of information that might be useful. So you can find me there at The Reading Symphony.
The Reading Symphony, and we'll make sure that we link that in the show notes.
Love that. Thank
But
you.
I just love that you are, living out that legacy and really using your challenges for purpose and living that out. So thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your
So
light with us,
welcome.
Katie.
I so wish this podcast existed, before, during, and after, right after I lost my father. So I'm so grateful for this content you're putting out, and what a beautiful way to honor your mom, who sounds like an amazing human. So,
Thank
so
you.
happy to be here.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Giving Grief Grace. If you found the content interesting and think it could help a friend or a loved one, please share it with them. Subscribe to this podcast and get a weekly dose of positivity. And while you're at it, please leave a review. If you enjoyed the show and want to support me financially on my grief journey, I'm raising funds for Project Purple, a nonprofit whose mission is to see a world without pancreatic cancer. I'm doing this by running the New York City Marathon in November 2025, and I'll leave a link to my fundraising page in the show notes. If you've lost a loved one and are looking for support in an online community, consider joining our free private Facebook group, Giving Grief Grace. May you be kind to yourself in the week ahead and give yourself grace. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.